we'll do a little mini review before we get started. And a couple of questions that came up yesterday that I want to answer, kind of address before we kind of move into things. So people know Kim? Is that right? Okay, good. This is such a wonderful group to work with because you all know each other. You're not like new to the topic, so it's really fun for me. We get to kind of dive into some of the meaty things. And why don't we start though with setting our intention before we kind of get into some of the meditations and all of this. And then Shayla, will you be able to bring up the prayer again? Okay. So first, just kind of refresh your intention, think about why you personally are here. What in your life are you hoping to achieve by thinking about this topic, talking to others about it, meditating on it? What are you personally hoping to accomplish? Take some time to really think about that. That may have changed since yesterday. It may have changed, the reason that you're doing this may be very different from why you would have done this last year. Things happen in your life. So what is your hope? It could be, as simple as getting some information, feeling more confident about this whole topic. And then as you achieve that wish, that goal, understand how that will affect you in your life and how your life is deeply connected to the people around you. So how will it affect them? Just you simply being in a good mood affects the people around you, the people you know and love, the people you don't know, the people you don't like. It affects everything. So now with this, if you achieve some of the goals and the intention that you have coming to this, imagine how that ripple effect will grow. And so you're trying to amplify your intention and increase it so that it becomes more and more altruistic and includes your ultimate enlightenment. So each drop in the bucket gets you to that tipping point. And so with that intention in mind, we'll say this opening prayer of taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. And we say it 3 times. The first time you can focus on the lives in samsara that you'll be leading. So, taking refuge through that cycle. And the second, with having achieved liberation from samsara. And the third, achieving great enlightenment. So Shayla, can you read it? And we should all say it out loud, but you might not be able to hear everybody on Zoom. So it's good to have.
Anna's going to take over for right now.
What's that?
Anna will be reading it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. If you're muted, I think, Anna. Thank you.
Taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merit of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings.
Thank you. So there's like so many different things I want to say, but just to follow up a little bit from yesterday, Barbara, I think you had this great question about, I don't know what I did in the past to deserve this human life, but, I did something. And there's this saying that if you're looking at what your past lives are, that brought you to this place, you should look at your life, your body, your circumstances, because there was some cause that created this. And if you want to look towards your future lives, you need to look at what you're doing now, because those are obviously creating the cause for the future. But also the causes for another human rebirth are practicing the 10 virtues and avoiding the 10 non-virtues. That's and everybody, I don't know if everybody remembers them or needs a reminder, but they're broken into 3 categories of body, speech, and mind. So we are avoiding the non-virtues, which are of the physical. So they're kind of obvious, but you can even break them into more categories. But we're avoiding killing, avoiding stealing, and avoiding sexual misconduct. There was something I was going to read to you here. Hold on one second. This book that I'm looking at right now is another one of these really juicy books that has like everything condensed into so many different pages. It's called How to Practice the Meaningful Way, the Way of a Meaningful Life, The Way to a Meaningful Life by His Holiness. And it has it's just really, really incredible. So the morality of individual liberation and practicing morality is one of those perfections that leads us to another human rebirth. So refraining from the physical non-virtues, then refraining from the verbal non-virtues, which are lying, divisive talk, particularly, that's meant particularly like in a sangha, but we can see in our nation what divisive talk does. So anything that splits people up, that's considered divisive talk. Then harsh speech, and then also what they call senseless chatter, gossip, just kind of nonsense that doesn't really, usually you leave that conversation. It might be very exciting to get into it, but you kind of leave it feeling, that. And then the 3 mental non-virtues, which are covetousness or jealousy, having a harmful intent, and then wrong view. And wrong views, but usually the view of an inherent self, the view that the Dharma is nothing, not helpful, that kind of wrong view. So then practicing the opposite, having all the opposite, avoiding the negative and creating the positive is what are the causes for another human rebirth, among other things. But that's practicing morality is huge. So knowing that you're doing that, it doesn't matter if you haven't done that before, because you're constantly weeding the garden of you. So you're always practicing weeding this garden. And to me, because I like to play around in the soil, it's just fascinating to see how clever weeds are. They grow their little shoots under some cement, and they come up the other side, and they're just proliferate everywhere, and they're just ingenious. They stick on your leg and you drop them somewhere else. And meanwhile, this pretty little flower or this little tomato plant you're trying to grow is so fragile. It needs all the right conditions. And so I look at those as the positive and negative mind states, that the positive mind states that we're trying to cultivate are just as fragile. I don't know why. Why is that? And I guess it's because the negative just don't need as much. They don't need as much to take over the whole garden. They just have this, okay, they could flourish even if there's concrete. Even if there's something chewing away at them, stepping on them, they still go. It's the positive ones that we have to tend to all the time and protect them from the weeds that want to take over. So it doesn't matter if you have a really weedy lot right now. You're here, you're thinking, you're talking about all this. This is huge. So we talked yesterday about how our brain is wired for fear, and that's a good thing because it's kept us alive. But we don't want, so it's not going to be unusual that we have a fear of death or a fear of things that are trying to kill us, because that fear has kept us alive. But now we want to capitalize and ride that fear in a different direction. We don't want it to take over and make us afraid of the death process. We want to use that fear and direct it towards, oh, I'm more afraid not to be prepared. I'm afraid to waste my time. I'm afraid to not practice. Yeah. And so you can try to channel that fear in a different direction and then have confidence that, there's this pathway that will help me have a good death. So that's why yesterday, Kim, I asked everybody to think about what are your own personal obstacles between where you are now and the kind of death that you want to have. this powerful death that in Tibetan Buddhism is the launching pad for being able to achieve enlightenment, but also to be able to achieve a very good next rebirth, to be able to conjoin your mind with enlightened, the state of enlightenment, and emptiness, to be able to join what they call child light and mother light at the time of death. So what's between you and that goal? And that's what we can kind of put our fear on. I'm afraid of not reducing those obstacles. But I have confidence that there's this whole teaching that's really set up to help me get on that launching pad in the right way. And so that I want to be able to die with a peaceful mind, with a confident mind, and very little fear about the process, you know. And I remember telling somebody that what I want to remember is that I'm perfectly safe, you know, that I'm safe in this process. And this is why we were talking yesterday about how St. Francis used to call death brother death. You know, it's things that we can do to reduce our understandable anxiety about it and practice with the death dissolution states now when we're in a healthy and comfortable state, so that they are familiar to us. And I had asked this teacher who came to the Kadampa Center if the whole point of meditating on death dissolution is to reduce our fear. And he said, no, the point is to become familiar. So if they're as familiar to you as waking up in the morning or going to sleep at night, you're not going to be quite as nervous when it begins to happen. You'll know, okay, this is what's happening now. Of course, you know, it's easy to say right now, but this is why we need to do, we can use so many things around us. So yesterday we were doing meditations on, you know, that death is certain. All of these things, all these meditations on death, you know, that the whole 9-point death meditation is meant to be like water in our face to wake us up, because we can get very like, oh yeah, it's coming, but it's out there. Then we see something like how all these people were killed yesterday in Korea, right? These young people who were going to a party, they didn't think that that very party was going to be the cause of their death, right? And so that's, again, what I want all of us to do, I talked yesterday about how these meditations are like an accordion file. I want each of us to be able to put into our own personal accordion file things in those categories, that death is certain, the time of death is uncertain, all of those things, so that you have actual examples, current examples. You're gonna have to change them out as new one comes in. You delete that file, upload this file, because there'll be things that kind of surprise you. And I remember when Geshe-la, who lived in my house for 9 years, we had this little cat, and she was just a year old and she died. And it was a sudden death. We're not even sure how it happened. But what Geshe-la said to me is some quote somebody had told him, which is, what you see in the morning, you may not see in the afternoon. And this was kind of this shock to him. And he used to, like, he broke his favorite mug and he would keep the broken glass on the kitchen windowsill. And I said, you want me to throw that out? He goes, no, I like it. It's a reminder to me that, you know, what I'm holding on to can go. And so our meditation yesterday on the river, and my picture that I showed you of the river between those buildings, it's to meditate on how everything is that river. And so then when you drop your favorite mug, it's like, there, okay, there it goes. There goes the river of cup. That we are in this river until we can achieve enlightenment, when we're going to be way above it and we can see how it's all connected. So this river of cat, this river of me, this river of cup, and understanding, you know, there's the whole meditation on you drinking your cup of coffee in the morning and meditating on how many people are involved in that cup. Have you all done that meditation? You know, from the people who grow so that whole river, you know, and it requires a lot of effort to do these, because we don't have, you know, realization. And I remember not understanding what that meant. But when you have a realization of something, then you don't have to generate it. You don't have to think it. So this is why yesterday we were talking about prison. I was saying, you know, the prisoners do not have to generate the wish to get out. They have the realization that they're in prison 24/7. And I would imagine most of them, that wish to leave there is with them 24/7. Whereas we have to generate that. Okay, death is coming. Look at all these people who didn't know they were going to die. They were dressed for a party. Oh, they died, you know. And these kinds of things help us they're meant to help us wake up so that then our practice is very focused and intense. It's a way of using death as our advisor in a good way, not a fearful way. Okay, so what I want us to do, let me see, talked about that, is I want us to get, well, I was going to say get into groups, but we're pretty small. Oh, so who else is here?
Sorry, Steve, that's
Oh,
me on my mobile, just
okay.
so I can see the share screens. And Steve, Shayla's shared the piece of technology I needed to share the videos. So
Okay.
I've got both videos ready whenever and if we need.
Okay, thank you so much. You all are amazing. Okay, so we're going to go into a meditation in a little bit where we're going to do this breathing exercise, and then we're going to do the 9 points of death meditation, and then we're going to do death dissolution. So it's going to be, one right after the other. Before we do that, I want to get you into groups. So maybe I'll just put you in 2 rooms, and I want you to talk over anything that you want to add into that 9 point. Can we bring up my PowerPoint? Is that possible? Do you still have access to that? Okay. Maybe we can bring that up and do the 9, and we can have it on the screen. What I want you to do in your groups is add anything, any current examples that you want into that 9-point death meditation. So let's go to the first route. So, death is certain. No one has escaped death. So if you have some example, like, oh, maybe you were a real big follower of Steve Jobs and it was shocking that he died, or, somebody like those kids yesterday, or something that helps you look at any of these. So for example, and traditionally what they do is you look at every person on the planet right now. In 100 years, none of those people will be here, except maybe if they were born today and they live to be 100. Things that kind of help you understand that no one's escaped death. The lifespan is decreasing. So there's not much time to practice Dharma. And then the second route, there we go. The time of death is uncertain. Many causes of death. The body is extremely fragile. And then the third one, nothing can help us at the time of death except Dharma. Okay, so this is one thing in the groups I want you to talk about. And because the reason I do this is because there's so much we can learn from each other. We hear a story from somebody else and it kind of shakes us like, wow, I didn't, there's just so many stories that are helpful, personal stories. And so you may not have anything, but you may have something that helps with that 9-point death meditation. So share that. That's one thing. The other thing is to talk over the homework. So the homework was, Kim, this may sound a little weird, but I have people, we'll talk about this in a little bit more, but in order to be able to experience the death states the way that we might want to, and to not get afraid of the bardo state, is to use our everyday waking experience, which is also a bardo, because bardo just means in between things. To use every experience to question it, is this real? And to see the illusory nature of it. It's not an illusion, but it's like an illusion, right? So Rinpoche makes that differentiation pretty clear. Things appear like an illusion. And so to constantly question, is this a dream? Is going to help us after this life when we're in the bardo, because if we can recognize that where we are, it won't be such a rock and roll experience. We'll be like, this is what's happening. I'm in the bardo. And to just think that I'll be able to do that. Really? Are you able to do that every night when you dream? Are you able to even do it in the daytime? Are you able to stop and go, am I dreaming? Is this real? If this was a dream, what would I do differently? So that helps me when I'm in a tense situation, like I described yesterday. If I was losing my cool about something and I stopped and said, is this a dream? Well, if it were a dream, I would do this differently. The whole landscape would change, because anytime when I've had a dream, when I've said, is this a dream? Everything becomes beautiful. It no longer is filled with that fear or that anger or whatever's going on in my dream. Same thing in real life. So the homework was to see how many times between when we ended yesterday to right now that people could remember and ask themselves that. And the prompt was, anytime you open a door, stop and ask yourself that. Because it'll get you in the habit of doing something that Lama Zopa Rinpoche does all the time, which is to kind of join your mind with the physical activity. This creates merit. So creating merit is so easy. So you could, as you turn on the lights, think to yourself, may I be able to dispel the darkness for others, right? That's hugely meritorious just to have that thought. When you open the door, may I be able to open the door to free other people from suffering. As you start to eat, may I be able to share food with more, those kinds of things. So it just puts you into that kind of mind state of being more aware of your actions rather than just, scurrying around. So that was the homework. I know it was really hard because I don't think I did it. But I give myself little prompts, and I sometimes write something on my hand so that I stop and remember. I did do that. So talk about the homework, and then talk about any, I had you all write down yesterday your personal obstacles in between you and how you want to have a good death. So any that you feel comfortable sharing, that's what I'd like you to do. Does that make sense? Okay, so they can kind of be combined. Talk about the homework, if you were able to do it or not, what got in the way, what gets in the way of you and this idea of your perfect death. And then anything that you all can think to add into that 9-point death meditation, those 3 roots. Okay. All right, so can I put people in breakout rooms? Let me see. And we'll be in breakout rooms for like 10, 15 minutes. Because we are going to hopefully use that. And Barbara, how did your homework go?
It went well. I remembered some of the time, which I thought was a plus.
Amazing.
The refrigerator, the cabinet drawer. I mean, those little things. And like just you said earlier in this conversation, the light switch. Now, see, that's something I've never thought about.
Right.
You know,
We don't, yeah.
The simplest things can bring the Dharma right there.
Right. It can bring our we can use everything. That's the whole point, is use everything. Use anger, use happiness, use everything to either be weeding or to be planting. And so in the center, we have all these little quotes from Rinpoche about, like, when you turn on a light, think this. When you open the door, think this. When you sit down, think this. When you stand up. So then that got me thinking about trying to bring that into my life. But also the whole idea of lucid living, lucid dying, lucid dreaming, they're all the same thing. And so just talking to Shayla a little bit about programming dreams, because usually whatever we're doing in our life, like say you just suddenly started knitting and it was taking a lot of effort to learn to knit, or learning Spanish, it would probably enter your dreams in one way or another. I know I used to love to play basketball. They had no girls' sports when I was growing up. So I kind of taught myself, and then I found some people in my 30s to play with. And I used to dream at night that I was dunking the ball, and it was the best feeling in the world. Of course, I can't dunk. And I never thought it was a dream, but I was dunking over all the guys. And then I was a martial artist for a while, and I dreamed that. So if you're intentionally trying to put something in your dream, more likely than not, it will be there. So first you have to figure out how to remember your dreams. And there's ways to start programming yourself to do that. If you have a strong intention to remember your dreams, and you put the pad of paper right by your pillow, and you start planting that seed, that even if you don't remember your dream, every morning you're going to wake up and write down how you feel when you first woke up. Maybe you have but you feel kind of weird, or you feel great, or whatever, or you just wake up with an idea of a color, or you woke up with the sound of a word or a song. You practice that every morning. You write something down as soon as you roll over in bed. Your mind starts to get the message, and you ask the sleeping part of yourself, send me those messages. So now you'll start to remember your dreams. And as you start to remember your dreams, then you can try to add in this part that we've been talking about of lucid dreaming. And the whole point of that is to help you see that just as you can program yourself towards the topic that you want to dream about, you can program yourself towards entering the death stages with a positive mind state. And that's what's so important once we realize that death is this launching pad. All right, so we're going to do several death dissolution meditations, but Shayla, if you have to go at the end of this book, Advice on Dying, we're going to do this one at the very end. We're going to do 2 different death dissolution meditations. One is the longer one that's going to go through all the physical sensations that we did a little bit of yesterday. And then the second one, he talks about here of just kind of practicing on the inner visions, that I talked about, the inner signs. And so that you're really getting ready to try to join your understanding of emptiness with the clear light of emptiness. And you had asked me yesterday, I think it was you, if every being can see that. And he mentions that in here. About something like, I can't find it right now, but basically, yes, every being will have that, but it's only like when we've developed our spiritual awareness that we'll be able to conjoin with that mother light of emptiness. Okay, and so I'm going to read a little bit from that at the end, which you might miss, so you can either watch this video or get that book. Okay, so now I want to get us into this meditative state where we're going to go through several things. And the first one is, so just get in a good meditative posture and refresh your intention of why you're doing this for the highest reasons, and how your mind and your good death will be a boon to the world. So here's our opportunity to practice it. Just take several deep breaths. And we're going to start off with 9-round breathing meditation, which I'll walk you through. And on your own, you can do this. You can do 3 rounds of it. But today we're going to do 1 round. But typically you don't do any more than 3 rounds because it's with your winds and your channels. And so we just do 3. So you're going to take a finger and close your left nostril and breathe through your right nostril. And then you're going to exhale the opposite way. You're going to close your right nostril and breathe out your left nostril. And you're going to do that 3 times. And then you're going to reverse it. You're going to breathe in through your left and out through your right 3 times. And then you're going to breathe with both nostrils. And so I'll walk you through it again. And when you're going to breathe in from the right, closing the left, and you're going to imagine that the air you're inhaling is from all the holy beings, just pure, crystal clean air. And then when you exhale, any discomfort, disease, fear, worry, stress, sadness, you're exhaling out. You can imagine it as black smoke going to the far reaches of the universe and dissolving. And then again, breathing in the clear light. Is that any questions about that? Okay, so let's start, and you just do it on your own time. After you do 1 full round, so then after you've inhaled with both nostrils, then just stay in a meditative state, and I'll walk you through the next part. Okay, so starting with breathing in through the right, and I'll let you do this on your own then. And now with a clear mind, we're going through the 9-part death meditation. The first root being that death is certain. It is inevitable and nothing can prevent it. We'll bring to mind anything that helps you deepen this awareness. And the second point being that our lifespan is always diminishing. As though we were in a car traveling somewhere. The road behind us is getting longer and the road in front of us is getting shorter. So that shorter road means less time to practice Dharma as well. The second root is that the time of death is uncertain. We have no way of knowing for sure. Our lifespan is not fixed. No one can tell us exactly when that moment is coming. And focus on how many factors contribute to death, but very few contribute towards life. So the very thing you are enjoying could be something that ends up ending your life. The third part of that is the body is extremely fragile. It's a very fragile life support system, carefully balanced, and the smallest thing can trigger kind of like a domino effect towards our death. And then the third root is that the only thing that helps us at the time of death is Dharma. That there is a path that helps us at the moment of our death, but wealth cannot help us. No matter how wealthy we are, we cannot prevent our death. Friends and relatives cannot help us. No matter how many we have, no matter how much they love us, even if it was a whole nation that loved us and didn't want us to die, that's not what would help us at the moment of death. In fact, that could actually become an obstacle to having a good death. And even our body that we rely on for this life support, even this body cannot help us at the end. No matter what our doctors are doing, no matter what our body is trying, it is dissolving. And so the conclusion from this meditation is that we must practice. By practice, we mean become familiar, become confident, become skilled. We must become skilled and practice this with pure intention. And right now. So now imagine that you are dying. You're aware you are dying. You're not fearful. You know you are dissolving into this great brother death. And you're starting to become aware of the signs. The first sign is your body's thin and weak. Your vision becomes dark and blurry. It's hard to see forms. You can still see, but your vision is dark and blurry. Your arms and legs feel like they are falling. You can no longer blink your eyes. Your inner glow is gone. Your vibrancy is gone. And the inner sign is that mirage appears. So everything is blurry and mirage-like, but you're aware that this is the first stage of the death dissolution states. Mirage is here and smoke is coming. And so you're not afraid, you're letting yourself dissolve and float into this experience. So in the second state, you can no longer feel the difference between pain, pleasure, and neutrality. You can no longer remember the difference between pain, pleasure, and neutrality. Your mouth and nose dry and pucker. You can no longer hear external sounds. You can no longer hear internal sounds. And the internal sign is smoke. So mirage is gone. Smoke is here, like wisps of fog, presents itself as an inner vision. And fireflies are coming. So then we enter the third state. You can no longer remember the names of the people who are important to you in your life. Can't recognize them, can't remember their names. You can no longer remember your relationship to the people in your life. Now warmth withdraws from your body. Your breathing becomes jagged with short inhales and very long exhales. Your sense of smell deteriorates. And fireflies appear. So smoke is gone. Fireflies or sparkling lights or glittering lights appear in the darkness. And you know the candle flame is coming next. Then the fourth physical dissolution begins. You can no longer move your body. You can no longer have mental awareness of why, when, how. You can no longer inhale. Your tongue becomes thick and dark, and your sense of taste is gone. You can no longer feel your body. And the vision of a flickering candle flame in the distance appears. And then this dissolves into the pure white sky-like sensation where you are this. You're not separate from this. Like an autumn sky full of full moonlight. And then this dissolves into a red sky like sunset in the autumn. Beautiful, clear, pervasive. And this dissolves into black sky, velvety black, as when you're falling asleep. You may lose consciousness for a moment or longer, or you may retain it with practice, being aware that what's coming next is the pure, clear mother light that you know is mind, your mind, free of all obstruction, that's been with you since beginningless time. And this is your moment to unite with this highest mind, to rest in this space. For as long as possible. And slowly take some deep breaths and come back. So while we just did that, I think I'll read to you from His Holiness's book about that last stage. Okay, yeah, here it is. The final phase in the process of dying occurs when the fundamental innate mind of clear light dawns. So that's what we were just doing. This mind has existed continuously since beginningless time and will continue to exist forever. Eventually, at Buddhahood, you become capable of remaining in the innate mind of clear light without passing through the reverse process. At that point, there is no way to no opportunity for the accumulation of karma. Even for an ordinary non-practitioner, the absence of coarse appearances dawns at death, this clear light. But a highly developed practitioner hopes to make use of this mind to realize the truth, the emptiness of inherent existence, through the force of familiarity gained from meditation on emptiness. The ordinary mind of clear light that manifests in the final stage of death is called the mother clear light, and the clear light generated through the force of cultivating the spiritual path is called the child clear light. When the mother clear light of death dawns, which dawns due to karma, turns into spiritual consciousness, knowing emptiness, the child clear light. This transformation is called the meeting of the mother and the child clear lights. The highest level of practitioner can transform the mother clear light, which dawns at death. So I'll read just those stages, because this is what you can also meditate on without all the physical stages of dissolution. Because these will be the inner signs that you will be able to recognize if you're not able to recognize all else, knowing that your mind maybe that's confused or wandering into different areas, that's just temporary, that's just the mind, but focusing on that mirage is appearing. Smoke is about to dawn. So then when smoke or fog or clouds appear, mirage has passed and fireflies are about to appear. And fireflies are appearing, smoke just passed, a flame is about to dawn. And flame is appearing, fireflies just passed, A vivid white appearance is about to dawn. A vivid white appearance is appearing. A flame just passed. A vivid red-orange increase is about to dawn. A vivid red-orange increase is appearing. A vivid white appearance just passed. A vivid blackness is about to dawn. A vivid blackness is appearing. A vivid red-orange increase just passed. The mind of clear light is about to dawn. The mind of clear light is appearing. A vivid blackness just passed. And this is where we want to stay as long as possible. Utilizing the clear light and the wind on which it rides is the cause of pure mind and body. To be able to rise from within the mind of clear light in pure body fashioned from wind, we must practice imagining yourself as having altruistically motivated mind and body. And so this is what high tantric yoga practitioners are using too when they are rising in that mind state as the deity. In this meditation, you can imagine arising as the most altruistic being that you can think of. Okay, and then slowly come back. And actually, like when we wake up or when we take another life, those stages are reversed. You go backwards through them until you're back in body, if that makes sense. All right, any questions or thoughts about that? Yeah, Barbara.
If one does not become enlightened during the clear light phase, then you go to the bardo. And is that where then you start going reverse dissolution? Does that happen in the bardo?
So in the bardo, once you find your next rebirth, then as you're taking physical form, that reverses.
I get it.
So you may only be in the bardo a second, or you may be there 49 days. That's what's kind of impossible to say. But you know, when I read the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying by Sogo Rinpoche, what I loved is what they were talking about. You know, I didn't grow up Christian, but I know some of the stories just growing up in Catholic New Orleans. And, you know, so the 3 days that then Jesus's body wasn't there, the Tibetan Buddhists are like, oh yeah, rainbow body, no big deal. I love that they saw that. It's like, yeah, that happens to very high level practitioners. You know, they're staying in this state for 3 days and then their body kind of dissolves. And so also, even if you didn't reach enlightenment during that stage, this is setting your next birth onto a higher level. So staying as long as you possibly can in that state, you know, is going to benefit your experience through the bardo and through to your next life. Does that make sense?
It does. And then a question that came up in the discussion room was the length of time in the bardo. I guess my understanding was that a human rebirth is the longest, is the most difficult to get because it's just a numbers thing.
Right.
So am I correct? The longer you're in the bardo, you're waiting for a human body? Or what determines if you're in the bardo for 2 seconds or 49 days? Do we have any idea what determines that length of time? And then kind of what are we doing for 49 days?
Right. I don't know that it's going to feel like 49 days to us, you know, because you hear these people who have near-death experiences, they feel like they were there like weeks and they were there an hour. It's really hard to say. I'll double check with Geshe-la. I have not heard that I mean, I haven't heard that the longer you're there, the more likely you are to have a human body. Actually, more kind of the reverse. And all the people I've heard Geshe-la talking about or helping once they're in the Bardo state, I don't ever get from him a sign that he knows when they've left the Bardo. It's just that the practices will continue for 49 days regardless, because that's not going to hurt. And so then every 7 days from the moment that person dies, they take a new Bardo being, life form, body, new Bardo body. So they go through that dying process in a miniature form again, and then have another Bardo body, which, is ephemeral, right? And so so that's why it's in these chunks of 7 days. And so within that period of time, though, if they take a rebirth, then they won't be going through that again. They will be in their new life form. But I think what determines where they're going to go is the karma that, each of us has created. And that there's something called throwing karma, which is at the moment of death, kind of sets you in that direction, which is why, we want to train our minds. So regardless, whether we're in a bus that goes off a cliff or we're laying in a bed very comfortably, that we can still try to recall at the moment of our death something positive, so that we're kind of launching it in that right direction. So this is why, I told you that Gandhi had practiced saying the Hindu word for God. That's what his goal was to say that word at the moment he died. And he was able to do that even though he was murdered. So even if we're having a frightening death, if we're practicing saying mantras no matter what, that's huge, that we're able to or somebody plays it for us if we're, having a more, hopefully, traditional death of laying in a bed. So that kind of that kind of steers thing in a certain direction. That makes sense. I think if you're saying, if you have you and I were talking before about this fear of the Bardo, it just sounds like one bad dream, right? But it doesn't have to be. And like I said, that's what Geshe-la said, that the writings that I was reading about that, he goes, that's for people who have no clue and who haven't practiced at all. But if we're becoming more aware throughout the day, like what's going on, is this my mind? Because a lot of the stuff that's happening during the day is a projection of our mind or our collective consciousness, right? So we all have that experience, how when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, well, first of all, why did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed? Something must have happened during the dream state. And so how everything looks different when we're in a bad mood. And so we can practice with everything, so that then during the Bardo, we can practice, right? So in the Bardo, and we're floating around and things are seeming crazy. If we realize, oh, this is the Bardo, we will be able to not just be tossed around by that dream state, because we'll realize this is not real. I can practice in the Bardo. I can say a mantra. I can ask for help. I can practice bodhicitta in the Bardo. This will probably change our experience of the Bardo dramatically. So I take confidence in this. This is a really silly example, but in some ways, not so much. I was waiting for this is years ago, I was waiting in the Newark airport to pick up my mother. And I don't like crowds, and it was hot. It was the summer. Everybody was bumping me, and I'm not really I'm not from New York. It was just, ugh. And people were getting off her flight. There was a lot of people. And every time somebody comes down this long hallway, it's not her. I'm like, oh, it's not her. It's not her. And then I thought, wait a minute. I think this is a point to practice. I think I can change, because I was getting really irritated. I thought, wait a minute. I think there's something I'm supposed to do here with my mind. So then I changed it, and I thought, okay, what if that person was somebody as cute as my mom? Like that person was somebody so precious to me, then everything about them would be so cute. It wouldn't be irritating to me that this wasn't my mom or whoever I'm waiting for. Like when you're in love with somebody, every little thing about them looks so cute. Every little thing. Oh, they look so cute that this thing is falling apart on them. It would all just be cute. And so all of a sudden I started doing that. I started forcing myself. Yeah, that person, I could imagine if that was my uncle who I was missing, how all these things would be so adorable about him. And everything in that airport started to change for me. I just started loving on each little person who was coming out. Maybe because it was my first time ever doing that, it was so profound. The change, the dramatic change that I was having in this airport. By the time my mom came out, everybody was kind of equal in their cuteness. And nobody was bothering me. People bumping into me didn't bother me. So it's kind of like that. That to me is a little mini miracle. I think it was Thich Nhat Hanh that said, oh, everybody wants to be able to stop the world and do all these things with their mind. He goes, try changing your mood. That's a miracle. That's a miracle. And that's something we can practice every single day. And so if we can do that in the daytime, which is can be as equally as challenging as the bardo, given the right circumstances, we will be able to do that in the bardo. And then we can say, like, wait a minute, am I alive? Is this the bardo? Oh, this is the bardo. Okay, maybe I can love on some people here. You don't have to be tossed around. You don't have to be wandering. In that video we watched yesterday, they were saying like in the bardo being might not realize they're dead. That's a problem. And so that's why people are praying for that bardo being, and to look for so then it's the force of our karma that brings us to our next rebirth. It's not necessarily that we're like swimming around and like, will anybody take me? From my understanding, it's more the force of our karma that will lead us to our next life. And so we can do as much as we can now to plant those seeds. And here's the good news. You have a perfect human life right now. You're born with a mind that's very capable of thinking and understanding, regardless of what crap each of us has been through, which we're all going to be immersed in because we're here. We're each very capable. We have these sense organs intact. We're not living in a war zone. We have the time to get on Zoom and think about this and talk to each other and challenge ourselves. We've each found a Dharma path, which is a miracle in itself. In this country where we have so many different choices and so many different obstacles we found this. And not only that, some of us are living in places where there is a teacher. And if there's not, we have access to those teachers, perfectly qualified, amazing teachers who are carrying these traditions all the way from the Buddha, these teachings, an unbroken line to us. Wow. Okay. So what are the chances of that happening? And we're worried about our chances in the bardo, but whatever brought us to the chances that we are jumping on right now doesn't have to just end today, or doesn't have to end at the moment of our death. There's two ways of looking at it. When good things come into our life, we've exhausted some kind of karma that created them, but we are also hopefully planting more karmic seeds for them to continue. So that seems to be the case because we are dedicating our merit, and creating merit is so easy. I remember thinking it wasn't, but then turning on a light switch, we can create incredible merit. Thinking, because when we are trying to meditate on things, if we're trying to increase our intention, again, starting with ourselves though, not ignoring ourselves, that was again my biggest mistake, including myself and expanding it to include others, then creates this kind of habit and also the merit, rejoicing in other people's virtue. So there's something called the Good News Network or something. I love watching that on YouTube. And there's all these kind of good news stories about people doing all these amazing things, right? Or I love to watch animal rescue videos where, people go do these incredible things for these animals or other beings, and then dedicating and rejoicing in what they have done, their bravery. That's huge merit. So understanding that there's so many things that we can do. I think Jeffrey Hopkins, who's translated a lot of Tibetan Buddhist texts, has said that one of the reasons he wanted to translate all these texts was if he wants to read Tibetan Buddhism in his future life, he needs to preserve it in this life. And so similarly, we're all involved with different centers that are trying to preserve these teachings and be able to share them with each other. And the things that you all have been doing and when I put you in breakout groups, this is also preserving the teachings, trying to deepen them in your life. And so that you can then share them and preserve them for others is huge, huge. I think I sometimes don't even recognize that. I brought Geshe-la to New Orleans a couple times, and then, the center I was trying to create there didn't take off. Well, is that, I don't know, maybe, so I felt, it didn't work. But the people there who went through Katrina benefited from all these different teachers that I brought there. So I think it's really helpful to meditate on the things we have done and we are doing that are hugely meritorious that we don't even realize. So that's my little spiel. But yeah, the bardo can be a kind of a frightening thing to think about. Shayla, do you have the clip, not the video, but that other clip I sent? So if you can bring that up, we can play just like 5 minutes of it. And this is Bob Thurman talking about the place that I have it tagged is where he's talking about lucid dying. So it's just like 5 minutes. And then you all can, he has a podcast out of Tibet House, 30 minutes, and some pretty incredible. There's a lot on death and death dissolution there. He gets into the weeds, but he also makes a lot of jokes. It's pretty funny. So Watch is trying to bring this up. I remember Venerable Rabina telling me that one of the things that's so appealing to her about, Buddhism is that instead of like denying ourselves things, we are using those things and like something pleasurable. We're not denying ourselves that pleasure. It's that we're using it and trying to share it at the same time mentally. So I remember when a bunch of monks came to Raleigh and they were staying in my house, they were doing this tour, and I brought, some of them had never been to the West, and I took them to just a grocery store, and they were just amazed. And they just stood there doing these mental offerings, right? They were offering all this food in the grocery store. So these mental offerings that we can do when we are engaged in something, we don't have to be the sole consumer, so we can consume something. I went to this garden, it was beautiful. And I was like, oh yeah, I should mentally offer this. So it's a way to not just consume and but you can be in the presence of all that and still offer it at the same time. When I go to sleep at night, I try to remember that, like, I'm so freaking lucky to have a bed and be in shelter and that's warm, So I don't deny myself that. I make a wish. I wish everybody could have a warm bed. And if I was able to, I would do that. I would give everyone a warm bed. So that's huge merit. If it's too hard, that's okay. I can send it to everybody and they have to listen to the first 5 minutes by themselves. Oh, here we go.
Repairing damaged.
Okay, can you skip forward to like minute 5, I think. See up at above the pause button, there's a little timeline. It should be up a little higher. If you bring the cursor up to where it says Bob Thurman podcast, like in the square, way up.
Are used by people who have different mandalas, who work with different depth psychological traditions. There's a whole host of them.
Whoops. I can't remember if it's minute 2 or 3, but we'll see where it'll say lucid dying.
that you can train someone, most people, if they will make called lucid dreaming.
There we go.
And there are clinics hospital in Brooklyn for a while. I don't know.
It's okay. It's okay. I can just tell you, I mean, he's not saying anything that different than what we were talking about. He's just talking about having a lucid death, which means, most of us are not super aware of those death dissolution states. And so it's hard to take advantage then of that dawning of the clear light mind that I read about. And so he's just, again, promoting that practice. And people think, I can't do lucid dreaming, but he's really saying there are ways to learn this. There's a lot of Westerners who talk about it. You can certainly start, if you have a really strong intention to try to remember your dreams. That's the first step, because you could have lucid dreams and not even be remembering them. So it's something to work with. And so even if you try and you're like, I can't do this, then you could practice just a lucid day. And that's hard enough. So your homework again today is going to be, every time, think about which one you want to do now. Like you can set it every day, a different one. I used to say, okay, anytime I see a dog, that was one day. Anytime I eat something, I'm going to do it. Then the next day I would say, anytime I open a door, or anytime I see a bicycle, or anytime I get in the car. So that you can do because you're not sleeping. So you could every day write something down on your little Post-it and put it in your car. And this is what you're going to be doing. And when I say a lucid day, it just means that you're going to check and see, is this real? Am I awake? Or is this a dream? Am I alive? Am I awake? Is this reality? How does this appear to me? What's my mind like? What can I change? Can I say a mantra right now? If you stop and do that for a minute or two, what I try to do also is I look at my hands. So in that Carlos Castaneda book, that guy's teacher told him, you have to be able to look at your hands in your dreams, or you're not going to see me again. You're not. And so the guy came back and he said, did you do it? And he goes, no, I didn't even try. And he goes, I can't do that. And he goes, no, you're not going to be able to see me until you can do that. And so he spent a whole year practicing to do that. And when he finally was able to look at his hands in his dreams, then he knew I'm dreaming. And then he was able to go back and meet with his teacher. But because the stakes got that high, that's when he took it seriously. So the stakes are high for us if we are wanting to practice with the mind in terms of death dissolution. It doesn't have to be, again, a lucid dream. It could be a lucid day. Lucid living will create a lucid dying. A good living, and this is the other thing that Bob Thurman says in this interview, is like, cultivate a good life. And each of us knows pretty much where our rough edges are. What are the things that we need to work on in our life in order to be content at the moment of death that we did something. And this is where I was saying yesterday, don't bypass your own personal samsara. It's a gift. Your story, your experiences are a gift. You don't have to do a spiritual bypass. Use that compost pile. So I finally understood that, went back and processed some things, worked with some things. It's made my practice, my self-compassion much stronger, which will only help my compassion towards others much stronger. So use what's in your life to cultivate that kind of life that you will feel that you did as good a job as a human being can do. You're a human being. And at the time of death, you want to feel like, you know what? Even if I didn't do those things for this many years, I did for this. And I feel pretty good about that. That's what it's all about. Yeah.
Steve, would you like me to try and share this video?
So if you can, if not, I think I've covered it.
Okay. So I'll play, share screen.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay. So if I come back.
I think, right. Well, yeah, go a little bit up to like there. That's good.
Is that okay? A little bit more.
Yeah, go to like minute 2.
Oh, I see 2.
Yeah, go right there. That's good. So if I can't hear it.
Oh no. Okay, sorry.
Is the sound up?
The sound is at its loudest. Okay.
You know what? Just close that and can you send it to everybody?
Yes, Shayla put it in the chat box for everyone.
Okay, so if you're
Has everyone got that?
can everyone see that link? And if not, you could put into Google Bob Thurman podcast Lucid Dying, and it should come up. So what I did, it's his podcast usually doesn't have visuals, but this one did, so that's why I liked it. And if you really want to get in the weeds with some of the states, he does. I really liked the opening, and I was going to also play something at the end that talks about that clear light. It's 30 to 40 minutes. It has a lot of visuals. You can play like 10 minutes a day and just kind of like, like I try to play stuff as I'm getting ready for work in the morning, just to have something. And it'll repeat a lot of what we've talked about, but he can really get in some of the weeds. But I really like the beginning. And that's what I was going to show for you all. But so I just want to check in with people and see where you're at, because I think we're kind of getting close to kind of wrapping up, unless there's things that you want to talk more about or want more conversation about, questions about. Yes.
Today was very uplifting for me.
Yay.
Yeah, it was, just some of the things that you said gave me time, just to think about. And it was very encouraging and uplifting.
Good.
So thank you. I have more confidence today.
Good.
Dying.
I mean, you have
Thank
such great energy, you have such great energy. This whole group is just a gift to me. And that's the whole point, is to have confidence. That's the whole point. We're very capable beings. I think as Robert Thurman was saying, we go to sleep every night without fear. The point is to also dissolve into the death states without fear. To have confidence in our practice, in our awareness, in our good heart. This is why when someone's dying, the point is to remind them of all the good things that they've done in this life, right? That's what we're following, is that. So we want to deal with our regrets now. This is why I'm saying, use your life, work on the things that you already have regrets about, have confidence that you're able to clean up things, and pure things can be cleaned, gardens can be weeded. We can feel like, I regret those things, but I've cleaned them up. I've done some purification practice. I've changed. I know there's certain things that I'm like, oh man, I wish I'd had that awareness then. Okay. But I have the awareness now. That's huge that I have that, because I know people who don't have that are still doing the same stuff. So we need to develop that confidence and boost that confidence, and keep, like, in your journal or whatever, your notes, things that help you retain that confidence when it slips. Because that's what we need, whether it's a song that helps restore that confidence, whether it's a podcast or things in your life, movies, whatever it is. I try to keep like collections of those, and they can be from all sources, from all different sources. That's the whole point. So I'm really glad to hear it. We need to cheer each other on. So, Michael was saying yesterday that, he's around a lot of people who also work with people who are dying, but he doesn't have a group of people to talk about his process. So you all have found each other. You've been in different groups together. I would encourage you to keep that connection, so that you all can reach out to each other and say, you know what, I'm really stuck on this thing, or I need some help. I need to talk about this thing. That's what we need. And here we are, worlds apart from each other, able to meet. So you can just send a Zoom link to somebody and say, hey, can you get on for 5 minutes and talk to me about this? I would really encourage that. And Barbara, you live in Milwaukee, right? Is that right?
I do. Yes. Yeah.
And Kim, where do you live?
Also Milwaukee.
Oh, okay, cool.
She was my sister.
Oh,
And Steve, with that, I do have a quick question.
sure.
Do all Buddhist traditions, other than the Mahayana, do they follow pretty much the same protocol when it comes to the dying process? Like, say, a Zen Buddhist.
Yeah.
Because Barb and I were talking, we don't have a center here, and pretty much what is available in Milwaukee are Zen Buddhists,
Yeah.
of which I know a couple. Is it pretty much same across the different traditions?
Well, Zen is also Mahayana. I don't know if they talk about the same death dissolution states, but I think that they all feel similarly about not disturbing the body in the dying process, you know. Anna, do you know more about that?
It's very confusing. I'm just doing a module on the tenets now on other schools and lineages and systems. And although they may seem the same, even if the language is the same, the language can have a different meaning. So it would be, I mean, couldn't give any further advice. For myself, it would be to not to learn something I would then have to unlearn, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to talk to people who you know now about what you want to be happening during the dying process, you know, writing it down.
Right.
You know, so my mother was here in Raleigh and I was helping her die, and hospice came to the facility she was at. I mean, she had hospice care for 13 months, and they were very good about asking me about what I wanted. And I got to know them really, really well. And so I was saying, which I think was unusual for them, is like, when she's starting the dying process, I don't want anybody to touch her. And they were fine with that. They were like, fine, fine. Later, one of them asked me why. You know, it was just kind of cute because she and I had become friends. She was like, why? Why not touch her? And so she was very respectful of that. And that I was worried. She said, well, the one thing that might be hard is, you know, she was in the dying process for 3 to 4 days. And they said, you know, the nurses are going to want to like listen to her heart. And but you know, but what happened is they didn't really need to. I mean, she was obviously dying, and she was having that long breath out for like probably almost a day. And then I had to leave at one point. Also, I felt, it was interesting to me because I didn't think I would feel this, but Geshe-la also told me when I was in the room, I almost felt like my presence was disturbing her. Like she was trying to, I don't know, it just felt like it was disturbing her. And so I would just circle the nursing facility and say prayers and, you know, mantras, and I would just circle and walk around. Then I'd come in and wet her mouth and then go out and walk around again. And then I left to go home. And that's when she died, which is not that unusual. And the nurse said to me, because she had heard, I guess the hospice had talked to her, she goes, don't worry, I haven't touched her, which was really, really sweet. And this is, you know, but that nurse had also worked in hospice before. And so and I'm sure she dealt with people like this all the time. What was important to her was to honor what the family wanted. And what I wanted was for her to be untouched for as long as possible. So they didn't even call in. I see she died at like 5 or 6. And so they said they wouldn't even call in whoever, the cremation society, until like midnight. So she was able to lay there for like 6 hours. And I was able to come and I put a Buddha statue on her head, and Geshe-la told me something else to do. And then, you know, also because I don't think, given her illness and her state of mind, I think she would have already left that body. And so Geshe-la had said, you know, like when I pull the top hair on the top of her head, that would also, if she was still, if her consciousness was still in her body, that would help her leave the correct way before they came to take her body away. So those things, I feel like, even though, you know, we're here and we're not in India or Tibet, those things we can try to set up in advance. And as long as people around us know kind of what we want and don't want, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Yeah.
I've just put in the link in the chat, a link with really a description of what you've just described, Steve, you know, the types of practices you may want, what objects to put around the body and prayer cards. And I'm sure there's a little package of sorts you can order from the FPMT shop.
Right.
Is there, Barbara, am I thinking correctly? Yeah, which will indicate, yes, Barbara.
There was, I don't know if it's still available, but there was a whole kit that had a stupa in it. It had a cord in it. It had a whole list of mantras to do at the time of death. I mean, it was really, it's very nice to have. I guess where I go, and Kim and I talked about a little bit about this in our breakout, is dying by ourselves. Again, I don't know how none of us knows how we're going to die, but I'm really working on being self-sufficient because I might need to be. I might be the only one that I can rely on because I could be hit by a car. I could be, you know, so I've just been thinking a lot about that, about dying alone.
So a couple of things about that. First of all, did Venerable Dondrub send everybody the link to the free booklet that I had him asked him to do? Because he will if he didn't. And it's part of the course material for this course. So if you got a link to the course material, there's like this 300-page free thing that Lama Zopa Rinpoche put together on death and dying. And there's also a page in there, Barbara, about how to, the prayers and the wish to go to Amitabha Pure Land, how to set that up. And there's a beautiful color photo of Amitabha. And so, you print those things out. A couple of other things you can do in whatever community you're in is talk to hospice now and say, I'm thinking about these things, and just ask them some of the questions like, how could I make sure somebody who was coming in like hospice would honor these things of mine? I guess, again, it depends on our illness. It depends on our amount of time. The other thing is you have a connection to this center, right? So do you have you been to teachings with Geshe Sherab and some of the other? So if you got hit by a car, then you would want somebody in that center then to start doing prayers for you in the Bardo, right? That should also give you a lot of confidence that you're not alone. You may be physically alone. Each of us may be physically alone when we die. I feel the same way, but there will be people from a distance who are helping us. And so you would want to make sure that, you could have even something that you carry around with you or something on your phone or something in your house so that if somebody, that people would get in touch with people who would then start this whole process. And that's one of the amazing things about being connected to a center.
Mm-hmm.
And in Milwaukee, I know in Madison there's some teachers as well.
There are. I think the center is called Deer Park.
Yeah.
But I'm not very familiar with it. And it's not an FPMT center. And
Right.
I kind of stick with the FPMT centers because I know that they're authentic teachers. And unbeknownst to me, one time I purchased some books from someone who Venerable Rabina very kindly said that, no, you shouldn't be reading his books.
Right.
That there was schism. I didn't know the whole thing, but I didn't know that.
Sure.
So I thought, I'm sticking with FPMT. I can't go wrong.
Right. But you can also, if say there's a teacher coming to talk in Madison that you're interested about, if you asked somebody like Geshe Sherab or Venerable Dondrub, you could ask them, because I know for Geshe Gelik, sometimes he'll tell people oh, there's this person coming to your area, you should go and talk to them or listen to them. Because they might even be affiliated with an FPMT, or they might be somebody that Geshe Sherab knows. So I know that Geshe knows somebody in Madison, so I think you're very spot on, though, to be careful and to make sure you understand it and stay affiliated with FPMT for sure. But then there might be somebody visiting who's going to give a talk that you might benefit from. And you could do that without having them become your teacher. You could just do that as an observer, taking in an important teaching on something. But very, very smart to check it all out. And you're right, you can't go wrong with an FPMT center and teacher. And I'm just saying all this to you because I know because of what you were just talking about, but kind of alone and You know, again, keeping your connection to the centers, to FPMT. I mean, I went up to get one of the very first things I did is go to a Kala chakra initiation in Indiana, where His Holiness's brother has a center, right? And that's where Geshe-la was one time, and that's how I got kind of all this started going. So anyway.
Well, I was thinking, I know Venerable Rabina is coming to Raleigh in the spring.
Yeah, come on down.
Well, I was thinking about doing that. And then I was wondering, I have a son that lives near Asheville, but that's like hours away, isn't it?
It is. That's like 4.5 hours away.
So that
Yeah.
would be kind of a hard commute, but
Right. But there's people around. I mean, just keep in touch with us and let us know if you're coming, and we'll put the word out that people are coming. Someone needs a place to stay, or yeah, we'll figure something out.
awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
same with you, Kim and Anna.
Okay.
Come on across the pond sometime.
I will do one of these all days. I will.
I
But I see Rabina regularly in the UK. February time she usually comes. We've met a few times. And it's worth the travel, Barbara. Absolutely. I've travelled from 11 p.m., landed somewhere 3 a.m., then got off a coach at like 5 a.m., waited around and then walked miles with a rucksack to the centre to see Venerable. It's absolutely worth it. Do it.
And where in England do you live?
I'm near Liverpool.
Okay.
Yeah, 10 minutes away.
Cool. Yeah. So sometimes my father used to live, when he was alive, he lived a little bit outside right near Oxford. He moved over
Okay,
there. He just was in love with the UK, so he moved over there.
beautiful place.
Yeah.
Oxford. Very nice.
So anything else that you all want to chew over?
I'm thankful for the new idea that death is a friend,
Mm-hmm.
not something to fear, something we can build a relationship with and accept, and it be a positive,
Right.
a positive relationship and understanding.
It's a different way of looking at everything in our life, is looking at it like this, that everything in our life and our death is trying to help us wake up, even our difficulties, even the worst things that have happened to us, that these things are not trying to destroy us. I think speaking personally, I know sometimes I've felt that way, that, everything's trying to, destroy me. But actually, even some of the difficulties in our body, they're trying to help us. They might go about it the wrong way, but everything in our life is an opportunity to progress. It's our fear that gets in the way, and it feels like it's trying to destroy us, right? The self that we cling to maybe needs to be dismantled, but the core, our consciousness is indestructible. And everything that kind of bumps into our life and that we bump into, if used the right way, it becomes the perfect tool. It's just a matter of if we can use it right. And so that's why I started off the whole teaching by saying what that teacher told me is that nothing in Buddhism is meant to disturb us or to freak us out. It's all meant to empower us. And so same thing is true with everything that's coming into our life, and same thing is true with our death. And so, if I often think of like, if an alien landed on Earth and was watching a woman give birth, this creature would be freaked out, would go back to their planet saying, oh my God, and because they can't see what's around the corner. It just looks like this person is in agony, right? And they are, but that person who's giving birth, that woman knows what's coming. And so she can tolerate that pain more or less because she knows what's around the corner. But because we don't have our memories of going through this process again and again, it's that same kind of like, oh my God, fear. But if we knew it was around the corner, and so some of our practice is to help us get that confidence that we have the ability to head our ship in the right direction. We've done a lot to already do that, and we have time to do more. And that everything else in our path can just help us steer that course. So we should be so encouraged and so over the moon at our chance, because we're not just walking around oblivious or trying to gain all these things that aren't going to help us at all. So I want to thank you all for your patience with me. And if you have any questions that come up, you have my email address and I'll try to get answers. And you have a lot of resources, an incredible center that you're connected with. I've got to meet Geshe Sherb a couple of times. He's such a wonderful, wonderful teacher. He and Geshe-la know each other from back in the monastery. So that's really, I love that. I love that connection. And next time you see him, tell him I said hello. And you have Venerable Dundrup there. I mean, you just have such a great center and great, wonderful people around you. And so let's take a moment now to dedicate all the merit. What an amazing thing that we came together on Zoom from all different time zones and areas of the world. The amount of energy that took on a weekend. How few people are doing that, coming together, talk and think and meditate on death. How few people have the desire to use their death in this way. And so you can rejoice in your effort, sharing your ideas, asking questions. All of this is, you just created so much positive karmic seeds. And now you have the opportunity to decide where they're going to be planted. So you can dedicate them in all kinds of ways. One, to reduce and eliminate any obstacles between you and perfect enlightenment, between you and the good death experience that will launch you into the next life, into perfect enlightenment. You can imagine all of these positive seeds that you've created joining the river of all the holy beings and your teachers and virtuous beings and human beings, all of their good merit. So your merit now is joined with all of theirs. It just gets amplified that much more. And this river of merit is rippling all around you, benefiting the people that you know and don't know, that you'll come in contact with, and just accumulating even more merit. Okay, and with that, I thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of the day, rest of the evening, and I hope to meet you again somewhere on Zoom or in Raleigh or in the UK, Milwaukee, somewhere.
Maybe in the Pure Land.
Thank you.
Yes, in Amitabha Pure Land. See you soon.
Steve, thank you so much. Thank you so
Very
very,
welcome.
very much. And I have a feeling I'm going to see you this spring.
Okay, I like that.